So I'm going to talk about tokenized assets. Where are we heading to, or what could be hypotheses that either are true or have to be doubted in the following discussions. So if we have a look to what the security tokens are in comparison to the traditional business, we do have, and that's a kind of repetitive for people that are already in the industry, we do have the traditional securities based on traditional assets, as well as already based on digital assets. Many in the room I have already talked to are in this kind of business, are offering things like a fund of crypto funds and other traditional securities that are based on underlyings that come from the Bitcoin, from the cryptocurrency, what have you, area. But the hypothesis is nowadays tokenization is what is the new fractionalization. So it's the new means of cutting and slicing down things to make it digestible and to bring it and to offer it to a bigger variety of clients on one hand side. Yeah? On the other hand side, there's also regulatory pressure. There's regulatory pressure to dematerialize. So in the end, everything will be digital. The question is this path irreversible? Will it continue to open up the markets for the smaller investors? And is blockchain, DLT, the only means of doing so when it comes to this dematerialization pressure? So first hypothesis, which I'm happy to hear more about later on. Secondly, if we look to the smart contracts world, smart contracts will massively simplify the security lifecycle. I think that's something that was in the room already in the morning. It was mentioned by the very first panel. Smart contracts are some kind of the miracle of the technology. Yeah? Replacing cumbersome intermediary-driven things and making them automized and quick. The question is again, is making security life cycles necessarily depending on blockchain, depending on smart contracts? Is a smart contract a contract at all? Yeah? I know a saying, a smart contract is neither smart nor a contract, it's just an automated program. So do we really move from complicated legal stuff towards simplified things on smart contracts? My personal view is yes and no. So there are areas where this will be a big release and it's relief, and it's already the case. And there might be still some more complicated things where it is not only an automated procedure where you replace legal stuff. Also happy to hear more about that and to discuss that. If you think that's not mainly the tokenized asset area, but if you think about the process of real estate, house selling, buying real estate and so on, how complicated that is and how much there is resistance from the current players. My third hypothesis is the complexity of compliance will cease to exist when we go into this brave new world, because you get rid of a lot of intermediaries mentioned this morning. Yeah, this is the charming thing. You have many parts in the process, and this is very simply showed here on the slide, but you have parts on the process you will never need anymore. Yeah? And if you look to the very right side, yeah, the ideal world would be there is the investor, and there's some authorities controlling the overall thing, looking into it with their viewing keys, and in the middle there's just a blockchain operating and doing everything. However, I want to bring in this picture in the center of the slide, Germany, the German EWPG, the Electronic Security Act, has already parts and bits in it where this is not as simple as we can think of, because you need to appoint a registrar. You need to have someone with a license for custodianship. So there's already different roles wrapped into it. And the question is, can we really expect that regulators let go all the central governance and really only trust on technology? Again, a question which I would be happy to hear from the panel later on. The next hypothesis, and this is really also to be put in the context of this morning's discussions, security tokens are the best in class, or will be the best in class digital assets for a couple of reasons. Yeah? If we start with financial return, security, everyone who invests into any kind of assets, and especially in digital assets, is looking for financial return. But if you look to the variety of digital assets, and it's a simplified kind of displaying it here, but just for the sake of comparison, central bank digital currencies, CBDCs, might not be taken or invested in for return reasons. There are many other reasons, as also Philipp Sandner said this morning. This is more the kind of the oil of the market of the future, possibly, or hopefully, if we ever get to that in Europe. When it comes to financial return, we might have much more expectation, and investors might have much more expectations to the security tokens if they in the future replace the traditional tokens. So this is making them really the appealing part of the digital assets from the financial return perspective. When it comes to legal stability, we have had these discussions in the morning. How much regulation is good, how much regulation is bad for this market, and are we, for example, driving away the markets, the investors from Europe because there's too much burden on it. On the other hand, if you look at it from an investor's perspective, securities tokens are already and will be the ones that are getting the biggest attention from a regulatory perspective, making them legally stable so that you can trust in what you have there. And the only other digital assets, in our opinion, and I'm basing this also, and you will see it in the sources on a study that I read recently, is the other digital asset that has a similarly high legal stability from the perspective of what will come, would be the central bank digital currencies. All the other stuff is less regulated. So if an investor seeks financial return in comparison with legal stability, it's already the security tokens that should be the chosen ones. And when it comes to adoption, we also do have a variety of angles why some of the digital assets might have higher adoption outlook than others. For example, if you look to stablecoins, what had happened recently, there is a little bit of reluctancy, pushback when it comes to some forms of stablecoins. When it comes to the cryptocurrencies, these up and downs, the high volatility, I mean, they are already established, but the future outlook of additional adoption might a little bit slow down. On the other hand, collectible tokens for the tech-savvy people is something, and we have already heard it in the previous panel, is something that makes sense. That makes sense to have it, that makes sense to invest in it, but it will never replace, if I just take what the other colleague said previously, it will not be a financial instrument. It's something like if you collect in the real world stuff that you are fond of, but not from the perspective of the high return, rather from the perspective of loving the things. So from an adoption outlook, my view is, and I would like to hear that as well from the panel later on, that security tokens are really things that will much increase in adoption and will take over or dominate the asset and wealth management world in a couple of years. Yeah? In the view that it's a transition from the traditional world to the digital world, and within the digital assets, given these characteristics, which can be discussed clearly and are subjectively measured here, but given these characteristics, they might be the best in class or the darlings of the future and current investors. The fifth hypothesis is the trading places will converge. The question is, who eventually will be the successful ones in this consolidation process? At the moment, we do have, and I apologize, the scale of the two axes doesn't mean that the left is low and none. It's somewhere in the middle, yeah. But here we look at digital capabilities and regulatory compliance. And we do have on one extreme, we do have the fully licensed traditional stock exchanges, which have digital capabilities. They're already gaining it, but they are still very much in the traditional old world. And then on the other hand, we do have, and in the room, we also have representative of this industry, digital asset brokers and dealers, and we do have the traditional currency, cryptocurrency exchanges here. The guess is, or the expectation is, that everything will converge into a marketplace where the security tokens are on a security token exchange. And if that happens, the question is, will there be a few players? Will there be dominating players? Will there still be a market with niche players? Or does this not happen at all? Something I would also like to be discussed amongst the experts later on. And finally, this whole transformation, be it from the primary as well as the secondary market perspective, will have positive impacts to some of the players and might have not so positive impacts to other players. So I think if I just take the left top corner, token generators, and we have just had, for example, Tokeny in the previous panel, those guys, they will profit from this. Technology auditors that are really tech savvy and are able to look behind the scenes here, they will profit from that. For the investors themselves, be it the buyers, be it the sellers, it is an increase, it's a positive impact of their flexibility, of their market access and so on. But there might be others, clearing houses, we have already heard today, transfer agencies and so on, that might not profit. And the general question is, and that's an interesting topic as well, especially if I look to our typical clients, how should a big market player of today position itself in order to be ready for this future marketplace or for this journey to the future marketplace, if it holds true that this security token market only has a smaller number of really profiting or winners market players. So these are the 6 things that came to my mind when I was reading recently an article, as I said, from an Asian company. They were doing this also in the context of setting up such a kind of marketplace in Asia. And I think it's a good food for thought. As I said, I feel myself some kind of a cheerleader for the next panel, as I very quickly stepped in, very recently stepped in to hold this keynote instead of someone who couldn't make it today. And I'm happy to take questions. We have a couple of minutes left, or comments. And thank you for your attention.